Out this week, we've got the fabulous Erin Robbins with us back, and we're really thrilled to have her here. Uh,
Yeah.
this week, on the Friday Hangout, we're going to talk about brands and social media. And on our panel
There's a
this
few.
week, we've got the fabulous Steve Farnsworth and the amazing and fabulous Adam Helway. He'd say hello, but he's on mute. And of course, Erin Robbins. And Erin, why don't you
Woohoo!
give us a little bit of information about who
Who
you
the hell you
are
are?
and why we keep bringing you back because you're so fabulous.
Well, I am no longer friends with Steve Farnsworth, and
Reason to join.
I think that's why you bring me back. I am the COO of Ginsometrics and a longtime lover of all things startup, digital, and analytical. And as for the real reason you keep bringing me back, I think it's because I agree to join. So.
Low-hanging fruit.
And before we start talking about our topic du jour, I wanted to remind people that if you're watching the chat live, you can actually ask questions through the question and answer widget on Google and YouTube. So go ahead and enter your questions if you want. We'll be moderating them there. And also on Twitter with the hashtag Friday Hangout, all one word. So, who wants to get started?
Janet, I have a feeling you're not recording from your microphone. You're recording from the built-in mic on your computer. So I just wanted to let you know because it's a little hard to hear you.
Okay.
Because I know everybody is desperate to hear what you have to say today. So I just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely positive of that. Steve, why don't
So
you pitch in while I fix my mic?
I will. Part of what we were thinking is Eric Hansen, who was unable to join us. He wrote a post on the top 50 social media folks, covering the top 50 brands, and it was just kind of interesting to see their experience. And I thought it might be worth, given everyone's role here, talk about kind of what social media, the role of social media folks within companies is going, because I think it's starting to mature as a position and also starting to fracture, and I think that's kind of interesting. And so I know that kind
well,
of
how do you see it fracturing? I'm interested to know what you think on that, Steve.
well, let me talk about the maturity first, because I think that leads to the fracturing. It's like the maturity is like, when people first started, a lot of folks who are running social tended to have no kind of marketing background or customer service background per se. They tended to be bubbly people, and those were the kinds of things that people actively looked for in job descriptions or people that they brought from within the organization. Now, what's happened, I think, is that role is we start looking at the tons of data that it provides, the opportunity to have a direct dialogue with folks, a way to uncover risks, to find opportunities, and using that horrible overused word, engage people. But that's kind of where I think it started. But now we're looking at people where we're much more. You have more of a marketing element. You have all these deeper things, and I think that we're requiring people who have greater background than just being social and friendly, and I think that's interesting. And I think the fracture starts coming in there, because now you have marketing disciplines, you have customer services disciplines, and that's what I thought we might kind of dig into a little bit. And nobody can hear Janet, which makes me sad.
I hear you, Steve, on people having greater than being bubbly as a background, and it's certainly not anything that anybody's ever accused me of. Usually it's another B word that they use to describe me. But, I think that one of the background things that I've seen kind of in this evolving role situation is that, right, wrong, or indifferent, I want people to start to really take ownership of analytics and really understanding kind of the broad spectrum of data. I'm not going to even try to go on some sort of weird big data rant because it's such a buzzword right now, and I think that people are misusing it a lot. But I would say that marketers, PR people, advertising people, etc., have kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit by either not having a background at all or having never taken a Stats 101 class, or also, and seriously, like, stats for dummies, I'm not even going to kid you, like, I have a background in stats and analytics, and I keep a desk reference on my desk because sometimes it's just a good reminder that sometimes the data isn't what it seems. Also, I think the siloing of stuff, so like social media people or advertising people or PR people or, you know, whoever it is, even SEO people, will oftentimes only look at their slice of data, and it's up to somebody in a different position, if anybody, I mean, who knows, right, to really look at all of the data mixed together. But I think that everybody in the organization needs to be able to see some sort of cross-data pollination outside of their own element, because it means sometimes that the way that you're collecting data is wrong. So, you know, kind of like goes back to, you know, bad information in, bad information out. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, Aaron, let me ask you in relationship to that. You know, in relationship to that, Aaron, is the data part the part that that folks should be hiring towards when they go and look for somebody to fill in these positions, or is it something else? Right? Those are sort of is that a skill that they can learn and make use of after they bring some other skills or characteristics to the table? What do you guys think of that?
I would say that that's definitely true. I mean, I don't think that you necessarily have to hire a data scientist as your head of marketing or your head of social or PR. I would just say that somebody that has never kept, analyzed, monitored, done anything with data beyond send out an automatically generated report or filled out a rote spreadsheet is probably going to have a tough time providing a lot of strategic insight. And sometimes, you know, whether you're hired to be a strategist or not, no matter what your job is to kind of contribute to the company, to make your boss look good, and to better the organization. And so if you are filling out items in a spreadsheet every week and have no idea how they're contributing to the greater good, sometimes you don't know if the information that you're putting in there is really correct. So I would say that understanding data and understanding just the overall measurement of not only your function of an organization, but how data is used throughout the organization should just be a function of everyone's job.
But here's the thing, and I think that in a lot of companies, there isn't that, you know, Steve was calling him bubbly, but there's a person who's a maven, and what a maven is somebody who can create community and bring people into the conversation and kind of get things rolling. And I don't think they're necessarily always a bubbly personality, but somebody who can really get people engaged. That person is probably not the person who is the data wonk. And so I'm seeing in a lot of brands that there are people that are very data centric and analyzing the data that the maven is bringing in. And then there are the marketing people who are trying to get that message worked in as well. And it's not always that easy for them either, because marketing wants to be marketing, 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 and that's not necessarily going to build community. So now we've really got three different hats. And asking one person to wear all three hats is very, very hard.
And that's my, let me be clear, when I talk about bubbly, I'm talking about people whose primary qualification is that they're personable. And I think that historically, 2+ years ago, was true. I don't think that's true now. I don't think you can get away with that if you're a big brand. You need people
maybe
who.
That redeems you a little.
No, it's true. And hold on. And I think that, you know, the point is you do need to have, with customer service, you need to have somebody who knows how to deal with customers, if that's their facing thing, or if they're tech support, that has a certain set of skills. If you're doing social marketing, that's a separate set of skills. If you're looking at the big data, I think that's a different set of skills. And that.
Steve, you're really like reminding me of that whole Office Space thing when they're laying off the dude and he's like, I'm a damn people person. And, you know, like, my concern here is that we're telling some people that they should be pretty and we're telling some people that they should be smart. And that we're not asking or holding anybody accountable for being both.
Listen, Aaron, how about like you? Let's be pretty and smart, okay? You got it? Let's just do that.
Come on, Adam. Come on.
That's the way you win an argument, folks. That's how you do it.
That's not how you win one with me.
Especially co-hosting with her husband another whole podcast. And so the other thing too is, you know, why can't somebody have some of both of those skills, be balanced in both ends? And what I mean by that is, I think that one of the primary qualifications is that the person is I don't know, personable may sound a little softer than it really needs to be, but somebody that has a sense of empathy, somebody who understands how to deal with people, because they're going to be, you know, sort of speaking on behalf of that, but then of course has that business acumen, and then also can learn about, like, well, what is the data that needs to be reported and and matters to the team that really doesn't care about the personal part and cares more about the numbers. Because you also happen, Aaron, to be somebody who I know for a fact is very very bullish on data and numbers, and not everybody can sort of tout that, but you also are a personable person, in all honesty. So
I just think that there's a difference between asking somebody to wear all three hats and to wear them well, as opposed to saying that they should glue a hat to their head and that they shouldn't have any other responsibilities in the organization. I think that even if you are the people person, spokesperson, and I agree that brands really do need those people, and it's also really hard to say that there are certain people within an organization that you can't drag out and turn into people. Like, I know that it's not easy, but I mean, I would say that if you're going to be out creating conversations, driving that ugly word engagement, all this other stuff, that you should have some idea of how you're being measured. You should have some idea of what's going on with that.
Yeah, I guess, you know,
I have a clue, but I don't think that you're really the best analyst always to do that. That maybe you need some help.
Well,
no, you probably need help.
Aaron, just hold on there for a second, okay?
And then he froze.
I'm so excited that happened right when it did. It's a sign from God. It really
Oh my God, he's gone.
All right, he's probably going to end up bumping
no,
out.
Adam, that's how you win an argument. You freeze the other person.
Google Hangout.
So much for being social. We just slam them.
Well, I think it's a good discussion, and I think luckily we had Erin here also to sort of fight on that side of things from where she did. So, it's a nice coincidence here. I know we were you jumped in and helped us out the last moment. But what other are we doing a general share? What other topics do we have? Because I have some stuff I want to talk about as well, but I don't want to think about myself here. I want to hear what you guys.
Why don't you dive in with that? I've got one that's around Google and mobile ads, but.
Okay, well, mine isn't Google and mobile ads, but mine has to do with the big story over the last 24 hours, because it's the 10,000-pound gorilla, which is Google itself changing the way it does search, and essentially they're saying it's their algorithm and such, and they're calling it hummingbird. And sort of how that affects people. It's really quite interesting, and I'm still sort of digging in to see how it affects SEOs, as you might call it, or people and dealing with their page rank and that sort of thing. But overall, what Google has announced is that they've made one of the most sweeping changes to their algorithm this time, which is different. Their algorithm isn't always what gets touched. Other things get touched in a lot of ways, and just by little incremental pushes with Panda and Penguin, those were sort of little things that happen here and there. Caffeine back in the day was what it was called when they did some other changes to their algorithm. But this is sort of the biggest thing that they've done in quite some time, and they sort of set it up as, now that people are using their mobile phones to do voice queries. So what I mean by that is, you use Siri, you're using your voice to ask a question. You use Google Now, you're using your voice to ask a question. That when people do that, they tend, because the way they type something is different than the way they speak, and they tend to do it more naturally. So when they ask a question of Google or on Siri, which ultimately can connect to Google as well, they say something a little bit more natural in the way that they do it. And so because of that, those queries also tend to be a little bit longer and have some inserted additional elements and words. And the new Hummingbird, what it's supposed to do is a couple things. It is supposed to have a better connection with natural language processing in order to pull apart meaning from those queries that people are doing on mobile. And then the other is that it's tying it directly back now a little bit more to the knowledge graph feature that Google has, where when you look something up on the side, if it's related, it'll end up having something that looks sort of like a brief Wikipedia entry about a particular topic, where it's pulling together a bunch of information from all over the place. Ultimately, how does it affect SEO? They said straight from Google's mouth that it doesn't affect SEO. It's supposed to make more relevant results show up for the end user. But ultimately, the most interesting part about this is that they're gearing this change is geared most for people who would be searching in a more natural way on mobile devices. Have you guys heard anything about this at all yet?
Yeah, actually, I have, and I think it is going to change search because we're going to be looking for more long tail. And, you know, the traditional keyword jockeys are just not going to be able to pull it off anymore. And so a lot of those strategies that people have been using to get better SEO are just not going to cut it. And I'm actually kind of happy to see that because a lot of them are scams that just rip people off. Steve, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, are we talking about the encryption of the technology where Google's using their own cookies and will no longer be providing information?
No.
This is in addition to that.
Yep.
This is in addition
Google's
to that.
had 3 big changes in the last 24 hours.
Why
don't you talk about that, Steve?
Well, you know, I think Adam talked about it last week, and I didn't fully understand the implications, but they're going to a proprietary cookie, for lack of a better term, which is encrypted. So now when you try to do keyword searches coming into your web page, that you won't be able to access that data anymore, data not provided or something. And so the conversation around it has been about, hey, you know, this is a way to stop people from keyword stuffing, which is really not a problem because they already penalize against people for that. So what it does is it doesn't show you how people are really looking for your product, and I think that's unfortunate. The people are saying like, hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. Just write good content, get good links, and it's like, but without the data. But they're going to keep part of that data in terms of raw search.
Well, they're keeping all the data. They're just not giving it to us.
They become the gatekeepers essentially.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to still provide that data for AdWords, but it's just you can't tell what's coming to your site, and they're also saying it's part of privacy concerns. It's like, really, that's just it's a waste.
I mean, I was going to say, I mean, as somebody that works, you know, on an SEO and content platform, you know, I can tell you that we've got a lot of response that'll be coming out to a lot of these changes. I'm not going to jump in and get too technical on it right now because I know that it's not the only focus of the show, but there will always be a way to find out how people are finding your stuff, your content, and so I can just say that it's the responsibility now of platforms like you know, Ginsometrics, where I am, as well as others, to figure out how exactly to deal with these updates and what kind of existing technology we have that already exposes things that our users need, as well as moving forward as, you know, not only Google, but other search engines and other things around the world kind of continue to happen. I can say that one of the really interesting things that we may not be discussing here is that Google rolls out some of these changes, but they don't apply internationally everywhere the same way. So there are companies that have international branding things that, so like, let's say, you know, the Philippines, Vietnam, etc., like are using versions of Google where actual like link building, keyword stuffing stuff still actually does kind of work. So, you know, I think that every time a lot of these things roll out, we have to remember that there are people that are managing international teams that have to deal with multiple iterations of search engine updates, and that there are search engines out there that aren't Google, as hard as that is to believe. So, you know, we've got like Baidu and Sogu and Yandex and tons of other stuff. So, you know, people are dealing with rolling changes throughout the industry, and we've seen changes happen before. Like, we all know that Google's just not going to leave things the same for years and years. They are making me start to hate the animal kingdom a little bit, because every time panda or penguin or hummingbird rolls out, I'm like, screw that animal for a couple months.
Well, they're going to go to waves on the beach pretty soon.
You know, Aaron, I know that you only have a few minutes before you have to drop off, but I actually would really appreciate. I mean, given you have a unique perspective, given your role, your multiple roles. I'd love to actually maybe get a little technical about how you see people will be finding out what's going to be this alternative when data is not provided, or whatever that term is that you're going to see in your analytics when you try to figure out words coming into your website. You said there are ways to address that. Could you talk a little bit about that?
You know, I wish I could. I don't want to jump in right now. Like I said, you know, we're going to be discussing how it is that we want to roll things out to our existing users and how we want to address this within our platform to people. But we also, as just a part of the industry, will make a statement about, kind of where we see things going and what we like in terms of trends. And if Ray, my cohort in crime and founder of Ginza, was not currently in Japan right now, I would probably be a lot more vocal. But I want to make sure that he and I kind of have a chance to chit chat first.
But he can't reach you.
Oh, you mean like to physically slap me if I say something? Yeah, no, I appreciate that too.
So I think, Aaron, we'd love to have you back when you're ready to talk more about that. And
that'll be next week.
That'd be great.
Well, that's a little soon.
You should just jump right on, because we love having you on the show. And so before I know you got to jump off, why don't you give us a little bit about Ginsometrics and how people can find you so they can get those updates?
Yeah, of course. So like I said, we are a search and content platform, and what we're really dedicated to is kind of findability for earned media. So that is all content that you create on the web. This is, of course, like a really evolving space. There's a lot of conversation. I actually just got done talking about whether or not the word SEO is dead. I think the word itself kind of sucks because of all the connotations and baggage that goes along with it, but that the practice is more important than ever. You can find me on Twitter at Texas Girl Erin, but that's not for the faint of heart. If you'd like a slightly more professional version of me, I suggest at Ginsometrics. And then always on the Ginsometrics blog on Found Fridays, which is usually right before this show at 10:30.
Great show with quality guests.
Quality guest.
So says the guest from last week.
So says the guest from last week. And then, you can always stalk me down on Facebook, as some people seem to have decided to do recently, and various other places. And usually wherever Adam, Steve, and Janet are, I will be following along like a lost little puppy because they're fantastic.
We love you, Aaron. Thanks so much for dropping on short notice.
Bye, you guys. Have fun.
Thank you, Aaron. See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So I have a share that's related to this, and I thought it was really fascinating when I ran across it just this morning, that Google just got a new patent granted, and it's for determining and or using location information in an ad system. Now, isn't that convenient after they just bought Waze? I think Foursquare should be very, very scary.
So I was wondering how you're going to put two and two together with what they're doing. So explain to our listeners a little bit first quickly about what Waze is and then how that would work or how that impacts things.
So Waze is a community-based platform that allows you to navigate from location to location. Just like Google Maps, you put in your address and it'll give you voice direction to get there. But along the way, people will say, there's an accident here, there's a cutoff road here. Yeah. Things like that kind of update you on traffic. And Waze actually calculates how your commute's going to go based on those things. And if it looks like things are really getting bad ahead of you, they'll reroute you.
Yeah.
Lately, they've been popping up a few ads related to your location. But now it seems like if Google just bought or got this patent set up, that they're going to be sending a lot more mobile ads our way.
Well, in Waze, I have to say, I think Waze is one of the really clever. It's a startup that actually went head to head, and it reminded me of how Google went after Yahoo when Yahoo was top of the heap. They found a weakness in Waze. As good as Google Maps is, and I love it. Waze went further and added all these really great true crowdsourcing of information and just great stuff. And it is a wonderful app, and it just outthought what the standard was and got acquired for $1 gazillion. But anyway, it's gonna be interesting what happens with that.
I think the interesting thing is gonna happen too when in my opinion we've talked about we've got tablets, smartphones, desktop computers. Those are the primary screens. We're starting to finally see TVs sort of blossom as a screen. In my opinion, it's going to be also wearable devices and then ultimately a big screen that we'll see suddenly explode over the next 5 years is going to be in car, the dashboard. And so they're positioning themselves in a perfect way where they are already using the smartphone. Waze is what I mean when I say they're already using the smartphone in a way that treats the smartphone like a dashboard in a car. It makes sure that, it sort of warns you that if you're driving and you're trying to touch things that you shouldn't, because you'll potentially crash, and it sort of tries to already treat it as if it could be in your dashboard. And so I think companies that are positioning themselves to deal with things like the location-based stuff, traffic, and then also the online radio stuff, so Pandora, right now even Apple iTunes Radio, those guys all have an opportunity to take a lot of market share in regards to advertising dollar and be the place that you guys are going to go to. We're all going to go to in order to be spending money to reach people in a way that we would normally only be able to reach them if they had their smartphones connected to their cars. And now it'll be coming right out their dashboard.
Well, and don't you think that speaks to what Shell was talking about on the show a couple of weeks ago, and his new book just came out, Age of Context, and really it is about taking things much more in context. And let's not forget Google Glass as well, that even though it seems a little off the wall now, I think it's got
pinpoint marketing, he called it, right?
Pinpoint marketing, yeah. Steve, what do you got to share this week?
Well, it's a report from Altimeter, and they did a social data intelligence, integrated social enterprise data for competitive advantage. And what's interesting about this report, and we'll share the link on the site, is that it looked at a number of companies, and it noticed that there's fundamentally, what they're talking about is there's a shift going from, historically we have all the social data siloed, independent, not integrated to the CRM system, and they said, there's a clear movement to start trying to capture that in terms of how it's done in big data. And it talked about and I'll actually like to read this little piece because it actually has a nice nice warning, and it says, as social data continues to proliferate, the challenges faced by organizations will only be compounded. To make the most of this shift, this critical resource, and avoid costly missteps, organizations must define a common approach to data collection, institute a process to share and interpret it, and most importantly, set clear criteria for action. The questions you must answer sooner rather than later are how proactive you wish to be and how much investment and organizational disruption you're willing to face to realize the promise of next-generation social data intelligence. And I think that it really says it really well, is that people aren't really starting to look at this. Big data is one of those things people throw around. The reality is that all that means is you take your data and see if you can take little pieces out of it to give you some indications of behavior. It's not that hard to really get around, and they're saying you need to start organizing it. How are you going to really use this data? How are you going to really action it? How are you going to integrate it with what you're doing? And if your company chooses to be around in a couple of years, you better be starting to have this conversation right now.
Steve, it reminds me of I had a client meeting. It was a pitch meeting with a company not too long ago, and it was interesting because this company basically, they deal with materials for beautifying your home, essentially. And they've been doing so for a long, long time before the web was a great place to do this, and they've sort of shifted their company to be as easy as possible for people on the web. And based on what you said, it reminded me of the fact that somebody in the company, when we were talking, they said, we're not a X, Y, and Z company, meaning like we're not a patio furniture company. We're not a siding company. We're not, we are a data company. That was sort of the proclamation that they had, and what I understood by that is that they themselves, in the position they were in, cared most about finding ways to gather as much data as they possibly could that mattered to them, so that they could chew on that and they could use it and leverage it to find buying patterns and behaviors and learn about their customers and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And whether it's around social and It was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what Amazon's been doing for a long time. That's why Amazon is where they are.
Really well, yeah.
They're a native data company. I mean, that's what they are, right?
Amazon has been accused of, and I'm not sure it's an unfounded accusation, of allowing other people to come along with any kind of market, go out, market stuff, and then it starts taking off, figure out how to co-opt that business. And they've been doing it pretty systematically.
But they own all of the data on all of the products, all of the people who buy things. They own all of that data, and so they have an amazing tool there. And same thing with eBay, really. And then when eBay hooked up with PayPal so that you could pay right there and then, I mean, those are really excellent examples.
And I think what Steve is saying, I mean, he was talking more about the social data than say general maybe e-commerce data as well. Is that it sounds to me, Steve, like you were alluding to, is that people, period, just if you want to be relevant, you're going to also need to start paying attention to this data, organizing it, and figuring out how are you going to use this a year from now in order to make you, in order to stay ahead.
Well,
Yeah, because
go ahead, Steve.
oh, I was just say, it's the data. What another report from Altimeter had, and it was interesting, is it said that out of all the benefits that people get from social data, and this is the real payoff, is it allowed them to make decisions better, to find opportunities more quickly, to make decisions around financial decisions, and understand the mood and what's happening with their client system, their users. Or customers, and make decisions based off that. And that was the greatest thing that they got. It wasn't about sales. It wasn't about this. This is a real feedback loop, and so that's what I think we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think that it's really difficult. I know I work with some really pretty big brands that are having a hard time filtering the fire hose.
Yeah.
And the bigger the brand, maybe it's harder because they have more outlets to deal with and more products to deal with. But it's very, very difficult to filter. And I think that, there's some great listening tools out there that people love. But you've got to have somebody who can look at those listening tools and extract that little data from the big data. And the little
Yeah, they
data
talk
is
about big
what's gonna
data,
give
but
the
it's
information.
definitely, and I think we may have heard this even at the Inbound Marketing Summit, that it's not about the big data as a whole. It's about that big data, that body of data is available to you. But do you need a swimming pool's worth of water in order to quench your thirst? No, you don't. You need a little bit of it at a time, and you may never ever need all of that at once. So it's like you said, it's about picking what's relevant to you, smaller portion.
Yep. Well, on that note, I think I'd like to make sure that you get a smaller portion of the Friday Hangout this week and pay attention to the data that we've given you. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. But before we do, Adam, why don't you tell us where we can find you? Well,
Anywhere that's
Friday.
at Secret Sushi,
Friday.
WW. I don't know why. I just thought that we should start calling Steve Big Data Farnsworth from now on for some reason.
Big Dave.
You can find me at secretsushi.com. I'm also the co-host of the Solo Mo Show podcast as well, and I'm a Secret Sushi on Twitter.
I'm Big Dave, apparently, and you can find me at Steveology blog or Steveology on Twitter.
And I'm Janet Fouts. You can find me at jfouts just about everywhere and on my blog at janetfouts.com. I'd like to invite you to listen to the show and tell all your friends about finding it on the Friday Hangout. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on iTunes and Spreaker and iHeartRadio. We're everywhere because
we love your faces.
Thanks so much for coming, and thanks you guys for being here today. And we'll go ahead and end the broadcast.